Welcome to 401k TV. I'm Tim Kelly. We're here at a TPSU program at Virginia Tech in Arlington, Virginia. I'm joined today by Alan Esenstad.
Yes.
Alan, welcome to the program.
Good afternoon. Welcome to be here. Thanks to be here.
Thanks. It's good to be here, especially because we're expecting snow up in New York, so it's nice to get away from that. I'm glad you helped me in that endeavor. Appreciate you joining us today. Want to talk to you a little bit about some compliance issues on a 401k plan. Before we start, why don't you introduce yourself? I'd like to ask you a couple of questions,
Sure.
if that's okay.
Sure.
But why don't you introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about the company, just general, how many employees, what kind of plan you run there.
Sure, I'd be happy to. So I'm the CFO at a nonprofit organization based in Washington, D.C. We've got about 125 employees. We have a national footprint, but our headquarters is here. We're a relatively modest budget organization, $15 million in annual sales. I joined as CFO about a year ago, and prior to that had been in senior financial positions in private industry.
Okay, great. Thanks for sharing that. Now, we talked a little bit about one of the challenges you had, I guess, when you just came on, or shortly thereafter.
That's right. Actually, before I joined, there'd been an evaluation about the size of our organization and whether we were subject to an audit, because we had just crossed over that 100-person threshold, which is the limit for an audit. And as part of that evaluation, there was an assessment about our employee base and whether we had eligibility issues about how we were enrolling our employees. So that process had just gotten started, and I came in on the administrative cleanup based on that decision.
Okay, so what happened when they did that audit?
So what the findings were that we had employees that should have been in the plan that were not.
Okay.
And so what that meant is we had to retroactively go back and calculate eligible wages back to their starting date, going back about 3 years, and then catching up with the match or safe harbor or deferrals for the period of time from they should have gotten into the plan to the time we took corrective action.
Okay, so obviously a stressful situation,
Yes.
as we discussed.
Yes.
So when you went about doing that, tell us a little bit about that process. What did you do? How long did it take?
So I think it probably took about 3 months to really sort of gather and crunch the data. We had to go back to go get payroll records, basically going back to the person's hire date, and calculate on a year-by-year basis what they earned, what was eligible as wages, and then what they should have been able to defer. And there are rules about how much you need to calculate and put in on behalf of the employee for a missed deferral or a missed match or things like that. So first we had to gather manually all of this payroll information, and then from there assess, okay, so what does all that mean?
Okay, so the potential of penalties was there and things like that.
That is correct.
In addition to the inconvenience and the stress, there was a little bit of a pain factor, I would imagine, in getting all this together.
Oh, absolutely.
And feeling the pain of it.
Yeah, so it took a lot of labor, a lot of manual labor to get all this calculated, and then you had to communicate that to the employees. And so there was then obviously the credibility issue of explaining to employees what had happened, why it affected them, and in general it was to their benefit. But in some cases we had actually had compliance errors where we over contributed in someone's account, and therefore we had to take back money. And so we had to deal with that sensitive issue of employee relations.
Overall, just a real steep learning curve,
Yes.
I guess, right?
Absolutely, and it was compounded because we were all new team. So I was new to the organization, our HR team was new, and so we had to learn our new plan, learn the administrator, and basically start from ground zero.
Well, listen, so we joked a little bit before, it was stressful, painful, but not fatal.
That's correct.
Pretty big learning curve. Had anyone in the organization had any experience in this before?
No.
Okay.
And the administration was handled in a very closed manner before, and so therefore when that person left, there was a big vacuum.
Okay. Did you use an advisor? Were you using an advisor, and did an advisor help you in reconciling your complaints?
So we work very closely with our third-party administrator, our outside counsel, and our outside auditors.
Okay, and they helped in the process.
Yes.
Okay,
correct.
So again, just want to understand the genesis. How did you use the same administrative third parties that were there previously, and how did they miss it? Or just trying to understand how
Sure.
it happened.
I would say that the issue was on the organization in terms of making sure that eligibility was appropriately assessed and then delivering on that. And so I don't think it was the administrator's responsibility for it. We had 100 people and we should have had 8.
Self-inflicted.
Self-inflicted, yes.
Okay.
That's a good way of putting it.
Okay.
Yes.
So so you overcame this.
Yes.
And now you're in compliance.
Yes, that's correct. And also what we've done is put in some checks and balances to make sure that report information from one source matches another source, and that we are on a routine biweekly basis making sure that things are running smoothly.
So when you say checks and balances, that's great. That's good to know.
Mm-hmm.
And I think our plan sponsors would want to know that as well.
Mm-hmm.
So is it a matter of separating responsibilities to one department checking another? Or
It's a little bit of that, and a
checklist?
little bit of also some internal controls. So our eligibility information, our change in enrollment information comes to our HR group, and we make sure that that is effectively communicated to the payroll department, and that changes are done when they're supposed to be done. And then in addition to that, from an accounting perspective, that payroll reports match 401k reports, so that the amount that we withhold gets into the third-party administrator's fund, and we compare those two and make sure that what we have in one hand matches what happens in the other hand.
Running smoothly.
Yes.
That's great. Well, I'm glad you got that under
Yes,
control.
I am too.
And I really appreciate you sharing that. I'm sure
Sure.
our audience is going to appreciate that. A final question
Sure.
for you. You're here at TPSU program at Virginia Tech. Tell me a little bit about what you learn in these sessions. This is not the first time you've been
No,
here.
it is my first time.
This is your
Yes,
first, okay.
it is. So I think it was a fascinating session. A lot of very practical, pragmatic advice from people that are obviously very close to this, that do this for a living every day. For me, this is a very small part of my job, but I think very important. And certainly coming out of that compliance project, I want to make sure that I stay aware of what's going on in the 401k space.
Great. Thanks again for joining us.
Sure, my pleasure.
Alan, appreciate
Yeah.
you sharing it. That was Alan Esenstad.
Yes.
And I'm Tim Kelly at 401k TV. Thanks for joining us.